believe that beneath the glittering lights of Hollywood, in the heart of Los Angeles, a gruesome murder once took place. A case so haunting it became known as a classic American tragedy, inspiring generations of films and books. A young woman brutally murdered, her body severed in half and posed like a grotesque work of art. And to this day, more than 75 years later, the killer has never been brought to light. This is the story of Elizabeth Short, the woman who would later be known by the nickname the Black Dahlia. Born on July 29, 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts, she was the third of 5 daughters of Cleo and Phoebe May Sawyer Short. One day in 1930, Cleo parked his car on a bridge and disappeared without a trace for many years, leading many to believe he had taken his own life. Phoebe May Short moved into a small apartment in Medford and worked as a bookkeeper to support the family. It wasn't until the family received a letter of apology that they learned Cleo Short was still alive and living in California. At the age of 19, Elizabeth moved to Vallejo, California to live with her father, who was working nearby at the Mare Island Naval Shipyard in San Francisco. In early 1943, Short and her father moved to Los Angeles, but she left soon after following an argument with him and took a job at the Camp Cook Mail Exchange. She soon moved to Santa Barbara, where she was arrested on September 23, 1943, for underage drinking. Authorities then sent her back to Medford, but instead of returning home, she traveled to Florida and only occasionally visited Massachusetts. There, Elizabeth worked part-time at cafes and bars and dated several servicemen. Elizabeth Short was described as a beautiful young woman struggling to get by. And like many other dreamers who flocked to post-war Los Angeles, she was willing to do almost anything to break into the film industry. On the morning of January 15, 1947, the naked body of Elizabeth Short was discovered in a vacant lot on the southwest side of Norton Avenue, between Coliseum Street and West 39th Street in Leimert Park, Los Angeles. A local resident named Betty Bersinger discovered the body around 10 a.m. while she was walking with her 3-year-old daughter. At first, Bersinger thought it was just a discarded mannequin. When she realized it was a dead body, she ran to a nearby house and called the police. Short's brutally mutilated body had been completely severed at the waist, and not a single drop of blood remained in her. The body had clearly been washed clean by the killer. Short's face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears, creating what is known as a Glasgow smile. Short's body also bore deep cuts on her thighs and chest, with some areas where entire sections of flesh had been removed. The lower half of her body had been placed about 30 centimeters away from the upper half, with her intestines neatly tucked underneath her buttocks. Her body had also been posed, with her hands placed above her head, elbows bent at right angles, and her legs spread apart. Investigators found a nearby cement sack soaked with blood. There was also a high-heeled shoe print on the ground, surrounded by tire tracks. The autopsy revealed that Short was 1.65 meters tall, weighed 115 pounds, 52 kilograms, had light blue eyes, brown hair, and severely decayed teeth. There were deep ligature marks on her neck, wrists, and ankles. Although her skull was not fractured, Short had bruising on the front and right side of her scalp, along with minor bleeding in the frontal lobe, evidence of repeated blows to the head. The cause of death was determined to be massive blood loss from a deep laceration to the skin, combined with repeated blows to the head and face. Police described the crime scene as resembling a macabre sculpture. The culprit's behavior. The body was identified as Elizabeth Short through fingerprints on file from a previous arrest at the Santa Barbara Police Department. The press nicknamed Elizabeth Short the Black Dahlia because she often wore black clothing and had striking dark hair. The nickname was inspired by the 1946 film noir The Blue Dahlia. The case became a media sensation, particularly driven by coverage from the Los Angeles Examiner. The body had been eerily posed, lying on its back, eyes open, arms raised above the head, with elbows bent and legs extended and spread apart. Steve Hodel believes that the pose mimics the photograph Minotaur by artist Man Ray. Flesh had been sliced away at the corners of her mouth, creating gashes about 3 inches long. These cuts are believed to have been made while she was still alive. Steve Hodel believes that these cuts may have been an imitation of Man Ray's artwork, The Lovers. The autopsy report noted that the cuts were clean and precise, raising early suspicions that the killer had surgical skills. The killer clearly made no effort to conceal the body. It was as if he wanted fame to make a statement. He taunted the police by sending letters, and even mailed Elizabeth Short's personal address book to a local newspaper. Several taunting letters were signed with the name The Black Dahlia Avenger. The personal items that were sent had been wiped clean of fingerprints using gasoline. There were reports of a mysterious black car seen at the site, where the body was discovered around dawn on January 15, 1947. Suspects and police investigation. The case was a huge story in 1947, dominating newspaper headlines for 30 consecutive days. The LAPD, FBI, and the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office were all involved in the investigation. A fingerprint was found on one of the killer's letters, but it wasn't in the FBI's records, so no matching identity could be confirmed. Hundreds of other suspects were questioned and ruled out. Police contacted around 75 men listed in Short's address book. Most claimed they had only met her briefly for dinner dates or to see a movie. Robert Red Manley, a salesman and former Army musician, was the last person confirmed to have seen Elizabeth Short alive on the night of January 9, 1947, at the Biltmore Hotel. He passed lie detector tests and truth serum interrogations, all indicating his innocence. In a strange coincidence, he died on January 9, 1986, exactly 39 years to the day after he last saw Short alive. Mark Hansen, a nightclub owner, was reportedly obsessed with Elizabeth Short, but he was ruled out as a suspect due to the specific condition in which the body was found. Glenn Wolfe, Short's landlord, was described by police as a sexual deviant, but he too was ruled out due to the condition of the body. Dr. George Hodel is the most frequently mentioned suspect, surrounded by complex evidence and suspicions. He was a wealthy, highly educated doctor with an IQ of 186. He studied surgery and excelled in medicine. Although he was no longer practicing as a surgeon, his skill set closely matched the precise condition of Elizabeth Short's body. His son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD homicide detective, believes his father was the killer. His suspicions began when he discovered photographs in his father's album of a woman he believed to be Elizabeth Short. Steve Hodel noted a strong resemblance between the women in the photographs and Elizabeth Short. However, a forensic artist initially saw similarities, but after taking precise measurements, concluded with 85% certainty that the women in the photos were not the same person. Steve Hodel rejected this expert's conclusion. Steve Hodel also believes that the handwriting on one of the killer's taunting letters belonged to his father. However, handwriting experts, including those hired by 48 Hours and the LAPD, found insufficient evidence to confirm a match, or were unconvinced that the writing belonged to George Hodel. Despite this, Steve Hodel maintains it was his father's handwriting. He drove a 1936 black Packard, which matched the description of the mysterious black car reportedly seen at the crime scene around dawn on January 15, 1947. Steve Hodel discovered evidence that 50-pound cement sacks had been delivered to his father's house on the day Elizabeth Short was last seen. He suspects they may have been used to transport her body. Steve Hodel believes his father posed Elizabeth Short's body to mimic the works of his close friend, artist Man Ray. A soil sample taken from the alley behind George Hodel's former residence tested positive for traces of human remains. In 1949, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office began focusing on George Hodel, officially labeling him as the prime suspect. DA investigators placed George Hodel under surveillance and wiretapped his home for 40 days in 1950. The original recordings no longer exist. Only transcripts remain in the DA's files. In the transcripts, George Hodel was heard saying, "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now." He also said, "This is the best payoff I've seen between law enforcement agencies. I want a connection with the DA's office." The investigation into George Hodel was abruptly halted in 1950. A lead investigator claimed the wiretap recordings had cleared him, but this conclusion has since been viewed with suspicion. Some believe the investigation was abruptly shut down due to the possibility of a payoff or a cover-up. This may have been connected to the fact that George Hodel was allegedly aware of widespread corruption within the LAPD at the time, including illegal activities such as prostitution and abortions. The cover-up may have been intended to prevent exposing a larger scandal involving the department. The LAPD at the time was described as a dirty bureau and a deeply corrupt organization, plagued by scandals involving police officers, organized crime, and widespread bribery. Both the DA's office and the LAPD ceased pursuing the Black Dahlia case in 1950, even though some investigators later told family members they knew who the killer was. Shortly after the investigation into him ended, George Hodel moved to the Philippines in 1950. In 1967, a woman was murdered in Manila and was found severed in half and posed in a manner eerily similar to the Black Dahlia case. Nearly 80 years have passed, yet the Black Dahlia case remains a haunting shadow over the city of Los Angeles. A young woman brutally murdered, her body mutilated as if in some deranged ritual, and to this day, the killer remains unknown. Was the murderer a mad artist, a deranged doctor, or simply a twisted soul desperate for fame? What do you think? Who was truly the Black Dahlia Avenger? Did Elizabeth Short know her killer? And the most chilling question of all, if the murderer was never caught, could he have lived on, hidden among us? These questions continue to haunt not just Los Angeles, but anyone who dares to look deeper into the mystery of the Black Dahlia. If you found this case intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chilling mystery. We'll uncover more unsolved crimes, the stories time tried to bury. Are you ready to dig deeper?